Off we go. So while I'm in Unreal, I might as well make our new scene. So this is obviously not where we're going to be building our scene. This is like a test bed that always comes with all like Unreal projects. We're going to make a new scene. So I'm going to come up to File at the top. I'm going to go New Level. And what I'm going to do is choose Basic, not Open World, not Empty Open World. You can choose Empty Level if you want to, but it just means you have to bring out lighting yourself. Basic just gives us a nice little, gives a bit of lighting and stuff. We can change all this later on, but gives us a bit of something to start off with. So choosing Basic, click Create. I'm just going to say Don't Save because all that is stuff I was just faffing around with then. Cool, so this is our scene. We're ready to go. So everything we're going to be bringing into here is the asset library at first. So this is our asset library. So let's go to File, Save Level As, Save Current Level As, or Control Alt Shift. I'm going to call this Asset Library. Oh, can't have a space. I always forget that. At least once in a project. Asset Library. So what an asset library is, if anyone's ever seen like well, asset libraries, or when you bought asset packs or anything like that, it's a way for us just to lay everything out and display it, and it's going to be really good for us for our portfolios because it means that we've got a place that's, you know, well lit, that's purely there to show off our assets. So I'm going to click Asset Library, boom, and you'll see there you've got this little asset library icon that comes up. What you will notice is a lot of things have little coloured lines under them, and generally orange means level. So this is our asset library. Everything will come into here. And then I'm going to make our level. So I'm kind of like cabin or something. So again, I'm going to go down to New Level. I'm going to call it Basic. Well, I'm going to make a Basic. And I'm going to call this, so save current level as, I'm going to call this cabin. And this is where we're actually going to make the meat and potatoes of our, we're actually going to make the level inside cabin. So asset library is where we're going to put everything. And this is also a really good place for us to actually look at our assets and make changes, make decisions, and you'll see everything updating there. And then cabin is where we're actually going to build everything. But if you update something and it's new inside, well, if you update it and it looks good inside the asset library, you don't need to import it into the actual cabin again. You don't have to replace it because it automatically updates it. You'll see that happen, and it's super awesome. Awesome. And then I'm just going to save the project. So I'm going to go down to Save All, Control Shift S, Save All, Control Shift S, Save All. That's just making sure that everything's properly saved. Right, now let's go to Maya. So this is already set up. This is our 4-meter grid, and each kind of quarter section, each quadrant, this is going to be 2 meters. So what we're going to do at first, big long hair, remember? What we're going to do at first is make very basic geometry. We're not going to do any fancy modeling. You're going to see, you're going to look at what we're going to make and be like, oh, is that it? And for a lot of what we're going to make at the beginning, yes, that is it. Because we're going to go both completely understand how to use Maya's snapping functions and how to make things to the size we want it. We're going to learn how to import and get things into Unreal, name them properly, get the materials applied, and all the kind of things that go along with that. But then we're also going to be building the level. Now this level is probably going to change shape and be redesigned as we go, because as we bring more stuff in, it'll, you know, we'll be able to see things better. But we're working to that scale. Remember, we're working to that size scale. So to that size restriction. So it's going to be fun. First of all, we're going to be making walls and floors, basic ass walls and floors. Now, in the past, what I've done is got people just making planes for this, but I think for this one, I'm going to go straight into making actual floors with depth. The reason why we're doing that is so that a single plane, the front of it that we look at, yeah, that's a plane. When light hits that, it will cast a shadow. But if on the backside, unless we change some options, the backside is technically invisible. So if light passes through there, it's just going to be invisible. So what we want to do is have actual flooring. So dead easy. Well, the main is floor. Let's make floors first. That's what we're going to make first. So cube. I'm going to make a cube, making sure that polygon, primitives, interactive creation is turned on for this. And I'm just going to make a cube. Whoop, like that. Made a cube. Awesome. Now here's where it's really good. Obviously this cube is not Great. 1, it's not in the right position. 2, it's not the right size by a million miles. But what I can do is if I, with this selected, so I'm holding shift, I'll do that again. So I'll hold shift and just drag out a cube. Like that. Doesn't matter the size at all. Drag out a cube. Hold shift like that. I'm going to go up to the channel box, which is this little guy here. All this information for now doesn't matter. What I'm really interested in is when we come down here to inputs, this is some preliminary settings. As soon as you start messing with it and start doing stuff to it, all these kind of get forgotten about. We can't do anything. But right at the beginning, what I can do is actually say how big I want something to be. So, width. Okay, I want this to be a 4 meter. I'm starting off with a 4 meter bit of flooring. In fact, I will also write this down. I'll start making screen notes. So I'll bring this in. This is a cool little piece of software I have at home called Epic Pen, which I advise people at least look at. You don't necessarily need it, but I use it for teaching. So the first piece of flooring is going to be 4 meters by 4 meters. You know. Okay, so with that, we know we're dealing with centimeters. So what is 4 meters in centimeters? Well, it's 400. So let's go for width 400. And let's go for depth 400. Boom. Already our floor is technically the right size. Awesome. The height though, that's different. I'm going to change that to be something like 25 centimeters. So it's going to be about yard deep. The reason why I like doing this is, at least in the beginning stages of stuff, what this will help me do is actually have, if I've got like separate floorings, if I've got like a mezzanine or I've got walkways and stuff, this has already given me the underside of something. But for now, I'm just going to do this as 25 centimeters. So in height, right here, I'm just going to input 25. Boom. So the numbers are width 400, height 25, depth 400. The subdivision width, height, depth, leave them alone. This should just be a 6-sided polygon. And boom, this is our flooring done. It's not in the right position yet, but we're just about to sort that out. So if I press W, you can see where our pivot point is right there. That's awesome. Now what's really important is getting to understand that there are relationships between where things are positioned in Maya and then where things will be positioned in Unreal. We can't just have something off to the side like this and then expect it to be in the right position inside Unreal. So even inside Maya, we need to set stuff up properly. Very simple though. Very, very simple. It's a 2-part process, essentially. So we're making our 4 meter flooring here, but new hotkeys, kind of new hotkeys. If I hold D on the keyboard, what that allows me to do is to release the pivot point and I can move it around independently. So that's just holding D. And you can see that it changes the shape. So now I can actually move it around. And then if I hold V at the same time, so D plus V, well, we did the snapping the other day of the V. V snaps to vertex. So if I'm moving this around independently, and then I'm holding V, it's going to snap to vertexes. And again, it's going to snap to the closest vertex to the mouse. So if I move my mouse to each corner, it's going to snap to the closest vertex. And that's perfect. Absolutely perfect. So I'm going to snap it to the bottom left here. The bottom left upper vertex, so right there. Bottom left upper vertex. I know it's the bottom left because right here is our axis. Now obviously mine is black, my background's black, so you can't necessarily see it, but there we go. So if I look down there, you can see that the blue is pointing downwards. So that's good. So I want that blue axis pointing downwards if I'm looking down. And I want the pivot point to be the bottom left in this case. So I'm looking like this. I should have the x-axis going to the right, y-axis going up, and the blue axis, the z-axis coming towards me. Up at the top here like this. And then, if I hold X, this is snap to grid. And what this does is snap to grid points. I'm going to move this to the middle of the world like that. So it isn't actually in the middle of the world. That's not how we export it. What we want is the pivot point, the snapping point, to be in that bottom left corner. because this is like a jigsaw. If this is in the middle, I'll show you. I might as well show you inside Maya. So if my pivot point is in the middle, and I'm duplicating flooring, how can I get these two edges snapping together? How can I do that? I can't do it if I, oh, I'm holding V, but it's not doing the right thing. It's snapping all over the joint. But if my pivot point is in the bottom left corner like that, in the upper vertex, now, oh, look at that. Now I can snap it to the corners. It snaps together. That's what I want. So that's why inside here, we're both snapping the actual manipulator to the D and V. We're snapping that to the top right, to the bottom left upper vertex. Basically, just look at what I've got on screen. It's not on the bottom vertex there, is it? No, it's on the top vertex, but it's in the bottom left. And then holding X, we're snapping it to the grid. So let me just update these notes here. So D and V snaps. Let me do that. Equals snaps to vertex position, and then X, as we know, snaps to grid. So grid snap. Awesome. And we're almost good. We're almost actually ready to export this into Unreal. At this point, I am not doing anything in regards to UVing or texturing. I don't care about that. It's going to look a little wonky at first, but as you'll come to see as time goes on, it's so easy to update this information and to fix stuff. Oftentimes we start off with like really basic stuff, and then we'll update with better stuff as time goes on. Cool. So we're almost ready to go, like I said. So we're making sure that the pivot points are all in the right position. Blue's facing towards us, going down. Red's facing down like that, and Y's facing up. That's all good. It's snapped to the middle of the grid like this, and the pivot point is snapped to the top left bottom vertex like this. Cool. Right. So with all those notes on there, I'm just going to get rid of them because they will get in the way. There we go. And what I'm going to do inside inside Maya is actually name this, because this is currently called P Cube 1. I don't know what P Cube 1 is really, so I'm going to just double click it, and this is where some naming conventions come in. I'm going to call this SM underscore. This is very important. It won't break a game, but what it'll do is it'll break people. If I get given a bunch of assets, I need to know what their purpose is. And if they're just called random things, I don't know what they're for. But if we prefix everything with some kind of terminology, we'll know exactly what's happening. Very common one you'll see everywhere is SM. SM stands for static mesh. And a static mesh is something that will not move. It's a mesh that will not move. We'll even put it on some stuff that does move. But like a static mesh, cool. I'll know that that's a static mesh. You have blueprints, a BP, so I know that's a blueprint. M for material, T for texture. These are all just name conventions so that when we see a bunch of files, we know exactly what's going on. So this is SM, floor, because it's a floor, A, because it's the main floor. It's probably I'm probably going to make like 2 or 3 floors. I'll probably end up only using one though. One floor size, not necessarily texture, one floor size. We'll see though. But this is SM floor A. Cool. Press enter. That's all well and good. Now I'm going to duplicate it. I'll press Control D to duplicate. Control V, Control C, all that kind of stuff. Don't do it. In Maya, Control D to duplicate. There is no copy pasting inside here. Now this one, I'm going to call this floor B, because this is the second floor, and this is just going to be half the size, only in width and depth, but not height. The height is exactly the same. Now this one, well, it's half of this in it. So what I can do is grab the vertexes. So I'm going to vertex mode. Hold right click, vertex mode, making sure I'm on obviously my floor B. And if I hold X and drag, I can snap to the grid points there. move around, grab these vertexes, hold X, grab, snap to the grid point there. Awesome. So now that's half the size. That's pretty good. So I'm going to export these now, and the last thing to do is just make sure that the data is correct. The name's defined, so SM underscore floor underscore A. It's a static mesh, it's part of the floor family, and it's the main one, it's A. And then the other one is B, it's the second one. Now the data is here in the channel box. I want to make sure that there's nothing that could go wrong. So we've got a little bit of translate information here. I want this to be 0. But I can't just input 0 there because it'll move, and I don't want that. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to here where you've got these little blue icons. This is center pivot, and that will put the pivot point in the center of the object. We don't want to do that for this. Pivot point's perfect. You got freeze transformation, delete history, which is when you do something to an object, extrude, bevel, bridge, all that kind of jazz, it'll create history. So you see now I've got like all this, like this little stack of information here. That's history. I want to get rid of that, and then I also want to 0 off this translate information here, because I just want it to be like neutral, naked, just plain. So I don't need to click this one on the left, this center pivot. That's not what I want to do. But I want to click the delete history, so you can see all that history's gone, and then freeze transformation. Boom, awesome. So delete history, freeze transformation. Now everything is perfect. It's a nice, plain piece of geometry. Nothing can go wrong. And I'm going to export it. How do I export it? I hear you cry silently. File, export selection, because I only want to export this object. And then I'm just going to send it to the scenes folder. Just let it take it where you want it. Just let it go to where you want it to go. And just make sure it's set to an FBX. You might have to drop this drop-down file here, and you want to go to FBX. FBX, not FBX DAE, whatever it is, just FBX. And if you don't see that, tell me, and I'll just show you how to get it back, because sometimes Maya can be a bit stupid. And what I'm going to do is call this I'm going to name this the same thing I named it in the outliner. So this is SM underscore floor underscore A. Uppercase for SM, obviously. Export. Boom, that's now exported. And I'll do the same thing for B. So I'm going to select B here, freeze transformation, delete history, file, export selection. You can see the SM floor FBX is now there. So I'm going to call this SM floor B. Export. Boom. So now we've exported. We've made 2 floors already. This is super cool. So now let's jump back into Unreal, and now let's import those into our scene, into our project. So make sure you're in the asset library. So I made this folder for this geometry folder, and to make a folder, it's dead easy. Just right click in this like grey space and go to new folder. It makes a new folder. So I'm going to go to geometry, go in there. I'm going to make a new folder inside here. So new folder, I'm going to call this floor. So all my floor elements are going to go inside here. Again, it's to save us having like just an absolute cluster of stuff to wade through. And I'm going to go in there. I'll just get rid of this little little pink box, because that's obviously from Maya. There we go. So now I've got the content folder with geometry. In geometry there's floor, and if I go in floor, you got import. Well, you'll always have import, but in here there's nothing. But what I can do is import stuff, or I can even drag in. That's even better. So I'm gonna navigate to that folder I've made. Not goblin cap, calf. I mean cabin. There you go, cabin scene. Scenes, which is where I save these FBXs, and I've got these 2. I've got SM floor A, SM floor B. I'm just gonna grab them and I'm just gonna drag them in like that. Now they need to be FBXs. They can't be OBJs or anything like that. It's got to be FBXs. Not that it'll break, because either the file will be imported and everything's okay, or it'll import and it just won't work as nice. FBX is just the safest file to use. The one thing we need to do though in here is not change anything except go to materials right here and just untick this at the top, import materials. I want to make the materials myself. I don't want Unreal making materials on its own. So I'm going to untick that, and then I'm just going to click import. And then you'll see, boom, look at that. Floors are in there. Our floors are done. And I can click and drag them in. Oh, look at that. Boom. Floor. Boom. Floor. And our floors are now in the scene. So I can actually select these, move them up. I am going to do one trick. I'm going to move them up like this, and then I'm going to press End on the keyboard. End is just above the obviously your arrows. What that will do is End will drop the object until it meets a surface. Because when I first brought it in, they're clipping through the floor. And this is what we're going to do in our main scene. We're going to have them clip through the floor. But just for like, you know, presentational purposes, I want to show the whole thing off. So I'm going to and then I'm going to hit End. There we go. So now they're sitting on top of the floor. Nice. So then I can press play, and there they are. Look at them floors right there. That's nice. Now what you will notice, and again it's really annoying, the Y and Z axes are flipped inside Unreal. So now the Y axis is facing forwards, and the Z axis is facing up. So just be aware of that. So I'm just going to arrange these. I have got that snap turned on to 100, so this is going to be nice and easy for me to make sure that there's 1 meter gaps between everything, because I like me some organization. So cool. So I'm going to Control Shift S to save everything. The little asterisks you see on these objects means it's not saved. Cool. Let's go back into Maya and let's make some walls. So back into Maya. There we go. For now, I'm actually just going to move these away from the scene a little bit. Just clear the space a little bit. And I'm going to make some walls. Exactly the same thing. So this time what I'm going to do is make a cube. My width. Now I'm not going to do a 4 meter wall. I'm going to do a 2 meter wall. So it's still going to be quite a wide wall, but I'm only going to be 2 meters. So my wall width is going to be 200. My height is going to be so that's actually height this time. My depth is what, that 25. So this is going to be I've reckoned this out in the past, and I reckon this is going to be about maybe 6 meters, possibly. Maybe even 4 meters or 5 meters. It doesn't really matter at first because we can always change it. I'm going to go for my height. Let's go 4 meters. Let's go 4 meters. I might end up changing later on. Boom. And then my depth, this is a 25. So I'll put that. So in this case, I'm starting off 200 for my width, 400 and not 4, yeah, 400 for my height, and then 25 for my depth. Same jazz though. What I want to do is place the pivot point at the bottom left here, the front. So I'm going to D and V, like we did before, DV, drag it down to the corner, and then I'm going to hold X and snap it to the grid. Now if yours doesn't look like this, stop and think, or ask me or whatever. So it should look like this. The pivot point, at least on these basic objects, shouldn't be back here. It should be here. But now this is 2 meters wide. It's currently 4 meters high, and it's obviously 25 centimeters deep. So let's freeze transformation, delete history on that. So delete history, freeze transformation. Let's call this SM wall A. And then do the same thing. Let's export that. File, export selection, SM wall A. Back into Unreal. So we're going to go back to that geometry folder now and make a wall folder. So all the wall elements are now going to go in here. And there might be a bunch of wall elements. You don't know what you're going to make yet. And then again, I've got my folder here. I'm just going to drag that wall into there like that. Now we don't have to go into materials, turn it off. It remembers that we turned materials off. So all you have to do is just click import, and that's our wall. And what we can do is we can drag it in. Boom. So now what we can do is actually play and think, right, is that tall enough? Is that too tall? Oh, okay. That feels maybe a bit too tall. I'm also going to change my start position. He's like looking off in the wrong direction for me. That, and then we'll move him over here. So when I start playing, there we go. So yeah, that seems a bit too tall for me. For like a Wisconsin log cabin. Okay, so here is one of our first looks at re-importing, but also doing some cool stuff within Maya. I think it's cool anyway. So back in Maya, what I'm going to do is in face mode, I'm going to grab the very, very top face here. And I know we talked about these little hidden boxes up here, so you'll have like a little, next to all these like white things, you'll have this little docked menu. And in the y-axis, with this selected, I'm going to input a number. And that's literally going to be its position in space. So I'm going to put 300, so 3 meters. So you see how that moved? That literally just moved down to the 3 meter position. In world space. What I can do is do the same thing with this. If I put, I don't know, 3 meters here, it moves in like that. It's all very kind of cool. Right. Freeze transformation, delete history every time. This time what I'm going to do is override. So I'm going to export this file, export selection. I'm going to override that wall. Yes, I want to replace it. And if I go back into Unreal, I'm going to right click on this object and go to reimport here. And it reimports the object with the new, dimension. Oh, sorry, I still had it in play mode. I always do that. I have to not be in play mode to import it. So now when I import it, there we go. Now it's smaller. And I can go up to it and feel, okay, that feels a bit better. That feels like, so, okay, 3 meters. 2 meters by 3 meters. We can always change this later on. Easy, easy, easy. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause the video for a little second, and then when we come back, I'm going to jump into the actual level, and then we're going to start looking at how we can start to build stuff and show you how quick and simple and fun this whole process is. Okay, so let's just Control-Shift-S to save. There we go. So yeah, this is the beginning of our asset library. And we're going to organize and add stuff. Add stuff. But this is where we can see everything and how it looks. Right. Let's go to the actual scene. So I'm going to go to the cabin scene. Open it up like that. Right, here we go. And we just can start moving stuff around. I'm going to move these light systems around, well, out of the way for now, because they are kind of in the way. So I'm going to move them. Sky atmosphere as well. Actually, that's a high folk. There we go. Remember these. I'm just going to move them out of the way. Ooh, pardon me. Sorry, I've just drank something really fast and it's burping. Yes, I'm just going to move them out of the way, just so they're not in my way. They're not actually going to change. Moving them to the side isn't going to change anything. Oh, pardon me. Alright, so geometry. That's where we're going to go, because we're going to start by building our basic floor. And I'm going to show you how very, very, very easy it is to build stuff inside Unreal. So I've got my floor there, I've got my floor A. That's my big 4 meter floor. So I'm just going to drag that in somewhere around the middle. Shaboom. Boom. There it is. That's where I'm going to start. Duplicating rapidly inside Unreal is very, very easy. Very, very easy. We don't have to Control D or Control C or anything like that. Simply hold Alt and drag. Done. We've just duplicated that floor. And because I've got my snap distance setting set to 100, it's snapping to basically a fourth of my floor. So I can very quickly snap it into place. Boom, boom, boom. I can do multi-select, so I'm just holding Shift there and clicking those 3, and I can snap and drag them. Boom, so boom. So now what I've got is a big 18 meter by 18 meter, sorry, no, 16 meter by 16 meter space. And I can press play, and I can say, okay, how does that feel? How does that look? Okay. Oh, looks about right. Okay, cool, awesome. And I can bring in the floor. Sorry, not the floor, the walls. Same jazz. So I could bring that in, and I'm going to snap it like that. Hopefully you're able to see why it's important that we put the pivot point in a certain position, in that bottom left position. So now it's all very snappable. So hold Alt. I can start to hold Alt. I can start to just rapidly make these walls. So bring it over, rotate it in. Bring it over, bring it over, bring it over. And this is just like when we're doing the extrusions on the lamp. It's getting us just using and getting used to the fact that you can rapidly move and duplicate stuff, and understanding how, and if we make mistakes, then we can see those mistakes happening very early on. like that. Cool. And I'll just move the player star in. So it's, there we go. So now when we play, we are inside a little box. Cool. So if we just kind of extrapolate that information out, what we can do is start to think, right, okay, this is a box, obviously. It's not a very exciting environment, but how do we make it an environment? Well, what if I start to push these just over here a little bit? And I'll grab like these two and I'll start to just, again, duplicate off. Bring these back. Okay, makes the environment a little bit more interesting. So let me just grab these four and like that. Again, all I'm doing is holding Alt and dragging. And I can just, again, and then rotate that back in. It doesn't really matter if things look particularly attractive right now, because we're just dealing with very, very basic stuff. We're getting, this is what we call the white boxing or the blocking phase, where we're literally just using very basic geometry to get a feel for the environment. Okay, looking good. So maybe I might want to maybe push out in this direction a little bit. So again, oops, I don't want to duplicate that. Move it back. So I'll just kind of do this. Yeah, maybe it only goes back 4 meters. So I'll just drag that in. Doesn't matter if this is overhanging, by the way. You'll be surprised at how much geometry clips through some scenes. Again, all I'm doing is holding Alt. So holding Alt, moving that out, and then just rotating it normally. Again, I've got the rotation set to 10 degrees, so it's going to rotate into 90 degrees really easily. Okay, so as you can see, I'm very quickly making the environment a bit more interesting, but I'm still not making it massive. We have got that size to stick to, so we want to make sure it's within those sizes, but very quickly we're able to get a bit of a better and more interesting environment, because this is a log cabin in like the American Midwest kind of environment. So just delete stuff by selecting it and hitting delete. And maybe I might want to, I don't know, maybe there's a toilet over here, so I'm just going to make a bit of something like this. Like that. Okay, so you can see that we can very quickly start to get a bit of a better, nicer environment. Still super basic though. What are we building it from though? We've got a basic floor and a basic wall. That's all we need for now. But I might want a window. Okay, so let's make a basic window, and the window doesn't even need to be particularly perfect at first, because then this is basic geometry. We're just doing proxy meshes. This is us sketching. So what I'm going to do is go back into Maya. There we go. And I'm going to duplicate, so Control D, duplicate, and I'm going to move the original wall away, because that's my original wall. I'm going to move that away. This one is where I'm going to put my window. And I'm looking at my references. I've got my references, and I know the kind of window that I want to make. And what I'm going to be doing is using two of those functions we talked about, two of those processes we talked about the other day. I'm going to be using extrude and bridge. So first of all, what I'm going to do is just in face mode, because I'm extruding faces. So that should tell me what I'm doing. I'm going to grab both the big sides like this. I hit extrude. And with the offset, I'm just going to bring it in. And then maybe just scale, move it up. Something like that. You know, approximately a wall. Or a window. And then I'm going to hit delete. So with those faces selected, I'm going to delete. It's because it's a window. I've got to see through it. And then we're left with this. Now, the reason we're going to use bridge is, obviously, by deleting it, we've left a big void on the inside. So what I'm going to do is go around, select this edge, and then this edge, because that's meant to be capped, and I'm going to bridge. Boom. This edge, bridge. Boom. Check that, that's bridged. Select this edge and this edge, bridge. Lots of nice repetition. Boom. There we go. And I'm going to call this something different. So this is now SM wall window. SM window A. New piece of geometry is already being made. Cool. So let's duplicate, delete the history, because you can see there that all this is what I've just done to it, and I don't need it in the mesh. So I'm just going to delete the history, freeze transformation. Just even though there's no information there, just it's part of my kind of process. History, transform, delete those. File, export selection. Again, inside this, so this is going to be a SM, static mesh, window, A. Exactly what I called it. And inside Unreal, I'm going to put this into the walls folder. There's no point in me making a Windows folder, so I'm going to put it in here. And then, yeah, I'll just find that folder. You can see there that I've got window there, so I'm going to drag it in. It's going to ask me to, just import it. Boom. There we go. Awesome. And I can bring that into scene. Very, very cool. I'm going to show you one very, very cool thing about Unreal. It's not the most neatest way of working, but especially when we're dealing with these like very basic block-ins, deleting something then re-importing all that kind of stuff sometimes can be a bit annoying. But if I select, say, this, and say this, like that. So I've selected these 4 pieces of geometry. What we're dealing with here is called static meshes. It's literally underneath, you can see over there it says static mesh, and we've called it SM. So what I'm going to do is, with those selected, in my details tab, I've got a bit of information. I've got its position in the world, and there are multiple values, so that's whatever. I've got multiple rotations. I've got material. I've got static mesh here. This is the important one. With this selected, you can see that all these are SM wall A. But if I click and drag on SM window A, you'll see that that little SM wall A section becomes blue. And if I drag this into there, I can quickly replace the windows, well, the walls with the windows. Why this is a bit messy for me is that it doesn't actually update in the outliner. It still says it's a wall inside here. But we're whiteboxing, we're sketching at the minute, so I'm not really that bothered. So I thought, oh, you know what, yeah, a bit of light there, bit of light there, bit of light there. Cool, let's see how that looks. If I don't like it, I can Control-Z back, because, it's software, I can do that. So now I can check that, see what it looks like. Okay, cool, awesome, yeah, that window looks okay, that looks fine. I can start making judgment calls. It's very, very cool. So let's make windows, making doors. Let's make a quick door. Now, what we're not going to do, really, is make a door that we can go through. We're going to make a facsimile of a door. But what I'm going to show you is what I might do just to make a basic door, to represent a door for now. So I'm going to move that away, because that's done now, that window. There we go. And I'm going to Control-D, duplicate a new wall from this, because I'm building it from this. And this wall A here, I'm just going to hold X, snap it to the middle of the grid, as we've done before. Like that. And I'm going to make a door out of this. But the thing about doors is people have got to walk through them, obviously. So how do I know the size of my object, or the size of my door, is going to be correct? Obviously, there's references. We're going to be looking at the dimensions.com, all this kind of stuff. We're going to be talking about using literal tape measures and measuring doors, all this kind of stuff, working from reality. But when in a piece of software like this, we need to make sure that what we're actually building is correct. And, especially when you start looking at pushing reality a little bit, maybe getting a little bit stylized, you might want to make things a little bit not perfectly to real-life scale. But they've got to look realistic. They've got to look correct compared to everything else. A person's got, the player's got to look at it and go, okay, yeah, I can see that as a door. It's not too disshapen. It's not too disshapen. It's not too misshapen. It's not too deformed. So what I'm going to do is actually grab a friend, and he's going to be on the VLE, and it's a perfect little thing for us to use inside this engine. So I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to introduce him in a second. And there he is. This is Manny the Mannequin. So we're going to be using this geezer inside Maya to make sure everything is scaled properly. He's a 6-foot geezer. And that's just like when you're doing design stuff, you always need a frame of reference. For us, our frame of reference is a 6 foot guy who's just like, we can base stuff around. Sometimes you will get real world dimensions for stuff, and for some reason they just look off. So we're going to use this guy to help us get a better idea about scale and stuff. Sorry, I've drunk something fast again. I'm repeating on me. Now I'm going to use some tools that we've used already to make this door, but what I'm not going to do is do exactly what I've done here. I'm going to do something a little bit different. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, select the edges going across vertically like this. Select all the edges going around. Mesh tool connect. Complete that, so press WR enter, and I'm going to raise this up. Again, I'm just eyeballing this in, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'll do that again. So I'm selecting all the vertical edges going around. You can draw a marquee through it like that to select them all, but yeah, I want all the vertical edges. And then a mesh tools connect, and I'll just complete that, press WR enter, and then I'm going to move it up about where you think a lintel of a door will be. So I'm going to go about that. I do the same thing going vertically, so I'm going to select all the edges going, well, in this case horizontally, going like that. And again, mesh tools connect. This time I'm going to add 2. So I'm going to hold middle mouse, and I'm just going to drag to the right to increase to 2. WR enter to complete that, and then I'm just going to use a scale with them both selected to just scale out again to approximately how wide a door is going to be. So I'm going to go big. Delete the middle, just like we did before, including the bottom there. So I'm going to delete these 3 faces going round. Hit delete. And then just bridge the holes again. So select these 2 edges, bridge. These 2 edges, bridge. These 2 edges, bridge. Boom, done. Again, freeze transformation, delete history. We'll call this SM door A. Again, we'll export that. So export that. SM door A. Go into Unreal. We're going to drag that. You can see how simple it is. Now in my folder I've got SM door A. Drag that into the wall section because I'm treating this doorway as a piece of wall because it is like that. So drag it in to import it. You can also click import just above it. You can also go through here if you want to. Totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. And then I'm going to do the same thing. So let's say I've got a door. I said there was like a little, so maybe like a little toilet here. And then maybe there's a doorway here. So again, what I can do is just while we're building a bit of a proxy mesh, is drag it into there and replace that. Cool. So that I can play that. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, cool. Awesome. So already we've got 5 bits of geometry. Well, really we're only using 4 bits because we're not using that small floor. We've got 4 bits of geometry that are starting to make a kind of environment. We're starting to feel it out a little bit. We've not put a roof on there yet. There will be a roof, and there's other stuff in there coming. But for this video, I'm going to leave it there, so just about 45 minutes. That's the beginning of us creating this environment, and this is all it really needs to be at first. If I go to the asset library, make sure we save, so Control-Shift-S to save everything. In the asset library now, all I've got to do is bring in those new bits I added. So bring in the door, bring in the window, like that. And again, I've got that snapping set to 1 meter, so I can get stuff nice and organized. There, ooh, look at that. So I can start to get stuff coming together. And every time we re-import a better version and more updated version in here. So for instance, what I can do is just to show you what happens, So if I make a piece of, so I do this, boom, that's the new door for whatever reason. I export that. I export over the door. So I literally replaced the door. And just to show you how cool it is, if I go back to my cabin, so we know where the doors are. There's a door here and there's the door here. But if I right click, if I go to walls, find that door, if I right click, import, if I've recently done it, or I can say import with new file. If I import, it's going to update all them versions, all them instances of that piece of geometry within the scene, and also in the asset library. Fantastic. So I can be here and I can make all the pieces of geometry really nice. I can do the UV and the texturing, set the materials, and I can make it all look nice here. And then when I go into my cabin scene, it's all been updated. It's all been done for me. It's all been sorted out. So it's very cool. So what I'm going to do is go back into Maya. Obviously, fix that. I don't want that. That's terrible. Export over the top of that door again. Go back into Unreal. Into geometry, into walls. Right click, import, re-import. Boom. Cool. Yeah, so back to normal. So yeah, with those 4 pieces of geometry, I've already got a pretty solid idea of what I want to do. The windows currently are just basic windows. Then might want really wide windows, I might want thin windows, I might want portholes. It's all based off what our reference is going to dictate to us. Because again, being 3D artists, we are designing very little in the most part. Really, we need to leave very little up to interpretation. If we've got a good design from our concept artist, we can just use that. And we shouldn't need to interpret anything. And we're not going to design. This is not a design class. Therefore, we'll use real world references. No concept art, no drawings, real world references with scales. So when we update, when we make new, and we might make multiple types of windows, we'll look at ways we can have fun with this. So before I go, I'm going to show you the scene that I've been building in my own time that I've only spent like half a day on so far, if that. I'll show you very quickly how the scene can look really good without really doing much else from what I've just done there. So, log cabin. This is the scene I was building the other day. It's a little bit bigger, a little bit more involved. There's a few more assets in it, but a lot of the assets are very basic. Are just proxy assets as well. There we go. So yeah, this is built off this exact same template. The only difference being is I've actually changed the control system where we're walking, and the camera's in much more of this Alan Wake kind of position that we've been, I've been saying that this is all based off an Alan Wake game. Like that. So if I go and open up the log cabin, so I've got my asset library. Let's have a look at the asset library. So we've got a bunch of stuff. And this might be like, oh my god, there's so much stuff. How do I do any of this? Don't worry about it. This is all really simple stuff. It's all based off, again, look at that 2-meter wall. This is just that 2-meter wall. It's got the same depth. I've just added a little bit to it. And then I've done these little breakdowns. So to do these windows, I've literally got the basic window I showed you before. And then I've got a separate window frame, which is still, it's not finished. You can see the UVs are kind of guffed. And then I've created a prefab or a blueprint object to create the window. And I've got 2 versions of that. I've got a big 4 meter by whatever meter section for the larger wall. I've got flooring here. You can see I'm only really using one type of flooring at the minute. Again, the door is made up of multiple components. The door frame, and then the door itself gets put into being the door. This is really good because with the windows and the door frame, I can have one door frame, or I can have 100 door frames. And then I can have one door, or I can have 100 doors. If I have one door frame but 20 doors, I've got 20 different versions of doors there, including doorways. It also means that I'm able to actually animate these if I want to and get them like actually moving and hinge, moving across a hinge. I've got a pillar, I've got some scaffolding, I've got the basic very basic beginning of a fireplace and a very basic beginning of a couch. And I got stuff, again, I got a very basic light, I've got props. I've actually got some bean cans that should be in here. So I can go into my props. There we go, so I've got bean cans. So bring that in there, bring that in there. In fact, I'm just going to turn on, my snapping's not turned on, so I can, there we go. There you go. So I've got beer cans and bean cans, I've got tables, I've got shelves, I've got the basic, so this is what a lot of these desks, so we're going to make at least 2 desks. This is what a lot of these desks start from. It's just this. This is just a white box that I made in Maya to give us, it's a blueprint. It's a box. And then from there, I made other stuff. I've got corkboards, windows, all this kind of jazz. Some of this is a little bit more in the complex side of stuff, but only a little bit, purely down to functionality. So, for instance, the windows, I've got these two here, and you can see the color underneath is different. These are like tealy light blue. These are blue. These are what we call blueprint objects, and I'll explain those at a later date in depth. But essentially, what these are is a version of the mesh where I've got the thing inside separate, and I can switch this out. But also, if I just... So I'm going to move it off screen for a sec, but because I'm dealing with that blueprint, I'm moving the window around inside the blueprint. It actually moves it around in the real world, because they're connected. Cool, so that's my asset library with some stuff. Not a lot of stuff, but you'll see what I've created so far after like half a day. So if I go to the log cabin, so what I've got is a bit of an environment. And I've used some little proxy text things to kind of give myself a guide. Like, okay, that's TV and kitchen area. That's the evidence area. This is a fireplace area. There's an entrance over there. And again, we're very early in on the whole process, so the lighting's not very good. I've got a little bit of a funny lighting thing going on outside. You know, I've got this... I've got some interesting lighting stuff going on. I was just experimenting. Put chairs. There we go. So I'll put some better lighting. There you go. Some more actual lighting. So yeah, I've got a corkboard. I've got a little, you know, rotating whiteboard that you often see. I've got a wall that I'm going to do all my, you know, my evidence on. I've got a couch. I've got a desk table, a lamp, a table. This just random cuboid here. This is just it's a filing cabinet. It will be a filing cabinet, but it's literally just a six-sided shape at the minute that's got the dimensions of it. So you can see after half a day, I've got a pretty good beginning point. And half of that day was just kind of like getting the floor plan working, you know. It's just at the edge, I think, of the size. It could be a little bit smaller. I might actually take some of this off. I might make it a little bit smaller, but I think most of my day was just getting the kind of like floor plan working, and then some basic texture and basic geometry, basic modeling. Half a day. It's all good. Pardon me. And we'll be looking at all this kind of stuff. Like, everything I've done here is all handmade. There's nothing that's been downloaded from an asset pack or anything. This is all absolutely handmade by me. And you can absolutely do this, and it's quite fun and quite simple. But as you can see, like, it's very effective. And then when we start doing even more stuff, we start getting the lighting in there. We start getting loads of different props. We're going to be able to get really close to that that Alan Wake reference we're going to be using. But yeah, I mean, you can look at how many props I've actually made for this. I've got ceilings. I've got 3 different types of ceilings, which are just the floors. I've just moved the pivot point a little bit. But I'm only really using one ceiling. I've got doors again. So I've got the door frame and a door, and then I've turned that into one object itself. I've got floors. Again, I'm only using one floor, but I give myself options. Furniture. Furniture's full of stuff at the minute, but a lot of it is basic. For instance, my fireplace is just an absolute trash fire at the minute. But that's all I need. I don't need anything crazy. It just needs to be very, very basic. Because when I make a better fire, when I update it, I'll obviously be reloading it here. Yeah. You know, we got all sorts, and I've made some of this, like, so the reason I've made this blueprint object for the fireplace is because I've brought a light on the inside here, and if I move this light around, you see how it moves inside the scene, and inside here I can attach blueprinting if I want to, so I can get it you know, for, you know, what if it reacts when you walk close to it. I can get that. all inside the blueprint. It's all very, very cool. So again, none of it is particularly complex objects. I mean, some of this literally is just a cylinder. I mean, what is that? It's a cylinder. That's it, and that's a can for now. Structural. So I've got pillars. Might as well go back to the asset library for now. I've got pillars. What is a pillar? Pillar is just a big cylinder. I mean, not a cylinder, a cuboid. This has had a bit of information put on it. I've softened the edges a little bit. I've made some a bit more information. But really, this was just a half-meter, I believe it's half-meter, section of cube. That's where it started its life as. Very much like this. So this is my structure for my ceiling. It's just a big cube. I've just made some dimensions. So it's a certain width. It's a proper width and length. And then it's, eyeballed in a depth. That's it. So some of this, like this, for instance, is very specifically scaled to something. The width, the height, the depth are all going to be specific things because it's based off something. But then there's going to be some stuff which you can eyeball, like these cans and stuff. You can absolutely look for the dimensions and the radius for beer cans and bean cans and all of that kind of stuff. But at the beginning, you can eyeball it in. And that's about as complex as this bean can's going to get for the time being, or if at all. I want this to look open, so, when you open up an old bean can, you bend the lid a little bit. So, yeah, going from what we've got in that other scene to this one, it's not a big jump. And these textures as well will not be the final textures. A lot of this is I had 10 minutes, I made a basic texture just so I had something to look at. And once you know what you're doing, that creation of texture is actually quite a fast process. Even doing it as like a proxy mesh like this. So yeah, that's getting stuff into Unreal, getting it duplicated, moving it around. I'm using this snap a lot, so this menu here with like the little grid and the 50, or in this case 50. I like setting it to 100 because that's 100 centimeters and that's a meter, and it means I can snap stuff really well. There should not be any eyeballing of position in this, so it needs to be very specific at the beginning. We can always make stuff look different later on. And there are tricks as well. So if I go back to the log cabin dead quick. Log cabin. There are tricks we do to hide some stuff. So you'll notice that we've got these pillars in some places. Now this is actually stopping us from seeing overlap or gaps in the mesh or anything like that. But it makes complete sense in the environment. These pillars make complete sense. Structural. And again, when you see the reference, or if you've played the game or whatever, you'll kind of know that this isn't too far off what the actual environment is. So these are being used to both use as actual structural stuff for the scene, but also hiding a few things. So I can, we can be a bit cheeky. And I can replace these. I can make another pillar which is a lot thinner and a lot smaller, so it's not quite as big. And all I've got to do is replace this, and again, all those elements have been covered up using very basic geometry and give it a good texture, and you're good. We've said it all the time, but we're con men. We are charlatans. We want to make people think we've done a lot more than what we really have, when really we've not really done that much. It's just obviously learn the balance. We want to do enough so it looks good, but we don't want to do too much, which is like useless. We don't want to do useless information. We don't want to use useless modeling. But as you can see, so far this is 6 hours on it so far, and it's looking good. So yeah, we'll leave it there for now. And as you see, it's very, very basic, and it's all repetition. There aren't a lot of hotkeys, there aren't a lot of rules, but they're all very, very kind of stringent, as you've seen. So yeah, see you in the next one.